Show, Personal Obsession, Part 4, Ghostbusters.
That's what happens when we talk about obsessions.
So obsessions. We are obsessed with talking about these things. And this week, it is Eddy's turn to talk about his obsession. First week, Keith brought sugar cubes. The next week, I talked about muscles with the gang. And Jules told us about Apple. So Eddy's got his obsession to the plate. But before we get into that...
What's new to you?
Oh, new to me this week is something I watched on Netflix. Because that's what I do with my life. It would have been about the Mystery Science Theater Kickstarter, but Eddy talked Kickstarter, and I was super happy for that, so I didn't get to go on about Mystery Science Theater. We'll see how that Kickstarter turned out. Keith got some good venting in, and his spleen didn't go out on me directly. So that's nice. So I watched a documentary called Big Star, Nothing Can Hurt, which is a documentary about Big Star, the band that featured Alex Chilton. Really was about the Memphis music scene in the late 60s, early 70s when Big Star was coming up. And it was pretty neat. You get to see not too much of the gang because unfortunately, Alex Chilton passed away and not a whole lot of the band was sort of around to filmed. But you got to see a lot of the players who were around then, and it was neat to watch a documentary about a band who I really liked. I think I got introduced to them through Keith and the other guys who came up from Tennessee. You may not have heard of Big Star. They're a great band. They have great tracks, and they've influenced a lot of bands going into the late 70s, like REM.
A lot of 90s. The 90s really gave us an appreciation of them.
Right. And
I didn't even realize they were playing in the 60s and 70s. I thought they were later.
Well, like Alex Chilton, when he's 15 or so is
when the Box Tops came
he was
out,
the
that was
lead singer of the Box
17.
Tops. Well, that's what they talk about in the documentary. He was lying about his age and was probably like 14 or 15.
Wow, his voice changed early.
So he was that song "My Baby Wrote Me a Letter."
Yeah, the letter.
The letter was Alex Chilton singing for the Box Tops, and that was in the mid 60s.
How's that song?
I got a ticket for an aeroplane. Right? I don't got time for no fast train.
So it was
Lonely
a good
days are
documentary.
gone. I'm a-going home. My baby wrote me a letter. It's neat because you also get... I've been watching a lot of Cameron Crowe, and he's attached to that era too, because Big Star was the band. Like, there was this conference where a bunch of the guys from Cream, Rolling Stone, all these rock magazines got together for this rock magazine conference. But really, it was just a reason for them to have a Big Star concert for themselves. And they were a band that was really only known by Memphis music crews and insiders. They were the band for musicians, and it's interesting to kind of hear about someone like that, a group like that, who is really young, doing lots of drugs and living this lifestyle that wasn't Woodstock, but was still somewhat influenced by that, and was more of like garage band British Invasion, which later informed what happened with indie rock in the 80s and into the 90s, and really influenced music beyond that. But you don't really know much about them, and it's more because they just didn't get the shot, not so much that that they weren't really, really good. So I recommend it. It's called Big Star, Nothing Can Hurt.
I think I've seen that.
It came out in 2013, and it's on Netflix.
Oh, cool.
Add that to you.
Yeah, I would love for there to be some kind of documentary just about Memphis in general, because I would say Memphis's influence on pop music in general. I mean, just if you go back, so much comes there. The Sun Records, obviously. Yeah. Then you got the Stax stuff, which is out of this world, and then and with all of them, there's always this neat blend of music, and
right.
and I think the Big Star definitely, they were a different generation than a lot lot of the other incarnations of Memphis music, but they were also this amazing blend of music, you know,
Right.
of just different styles.
Muscle Shoals documentary.
Yeah, but Muscle Shoals isn't even that far from it, too.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something talking about is it Stax?
Mm-hmm.
They have the guy who started Ardent, which became Stax, but I think it's Jim Ardent, or it's he was a super young kid. He was like 20, 21, and he's just like, I'm making a record studio.
Dude, there's an amazing PBS documentary about Stax. It's great. And
so they interview him, and he talks a little bit about.
Yeah, it's him and his sister took over an old movie theater, and they said, well, no one's coming to watch these movies, so let's turn it into a recording studio. And their policy was, it's an open door policy. You pay us money, you can use the studio. We'll cut the record. We'll sell them in the front where the old concession stand used to be, and the sister ran that part. But these amazing musicians just landed in their laps.
Yeah, that's what he was saying.
Booker T and the MGs guys.
Wow.
Steve Cropper, and just all these guys that are just absolute legends. Were like high schoolers in the neighborhood.
Sam and Dave, I think, were Stax.
Yep. That's Sam and Dave, the Soul Man guys. When they say "Play it, Steve," that's Steve Cropper, who was a high school student down the road and was friends with Booker T. And that's how they started. The backing band for the Stax was Booker T.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
I love it.
And yeah, he was saying, the guy who ran that studio was saying they would give a clinic. They would say almost like a community television station where they would teach you how to use the gear.
Yeah.
And then once you'd learned how to use the gear, you could just come in on off time and record stuff. So you just had bands coming in and cutting records.
Yeah, I won't go much further into it because I think it's not interesting to everyone, but there's a really awesome story about Otis Redding coming in for the first time. That situation fun. He was hauling music equipment for the guy who was paying for the session, and after the session he's like, I got money, can I play? Can I sing a song? And they're like, all right. And
wow.
It's Otis Redding. It's amazing.
We can get into that at another day.
Yeah.
All right, so personal obsessions. We've gone through a few. Now we're gonna let our guest get his druthers out.
Yeah.
Ghosts.
Hello, Ghostbusters.
They're real.
You do?
They're mean.
You have?
They're here. Ghostbusters.
Hey, anybody see a ghost?
They catch the ghost that won't stay dead. They're armed. They're dangerous.
Try to imagine all life as you know it stopping instantaneously and every molecule in body floating.
There's so many directions that I feel like I can take this rant on, but I think because my obsession for the greater part of my life has been Ghostbusters, the movie, and a good amount of the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. The obsession sort of peaked. I'm not one of the super fans that collects the materials on eBay and can like build a proton pack. I know that there are certain materials out there that super fans share, and they can build an awesome replica of the proton pack. I could see myself going down that, but if I had wanted to put in the time to do it, but it never really got that far. But Ghostbusters means so much to me for a variety of reasons, and I think
Could you give just a little setup for in
Sure.
case Ghostbusters is new to anyone?
Just
in case, just give them a little recap.
Ghostbusters is an original fiction sci-fi comedy film that was released in 1984 from Columbia Pictures, directed by Ivan Reitman, starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis. Okay, so for me, Ghostbusters, I was born in 82. Ghostbusters came out in 84. I did not see the original in the theater, but I saw it many times at VHS at home, and And from there, it kind of opened up the Real Ghostbusters cartoon, which I spent a lot of my time watching the Real Ghostbusters cartoon. And for me, Ghostbusters was so interesting and fascinating because it was probably at a time where, as a kid, it was opening up like the creative world in my mind of like science and religion, but it was all happening in New York City, and New York City is this like big kingdom, and it just seemed super believable at the time. Like, I bought into it. I could see myself growing up and becoming a Ghostbuster, and that was part of the hook of the story that they had, was that these three guys they start a business. The movie is about three guys starting a business and trying to successfully run a business, and they are basically paranormal janitors in New York City. And it had such a blue collar element to it like my father was an electrician, my grandfather was a carpenter, and it just, these guys were like mechanics. They were working in the garage,
Right,
and
like professors turned pest control.
Yeah, and it also, Ghostbusters, using all of those elements, taught me sarcasm. I learned a tone of communication that I'd never heard before, and I understood it, and it stuck with me. It's a big part of how I communicate today, is how these guys would communicate with. They sort of like, Jules, where you were talking about like rooting for a team. The Ghostbusters were a team, and there was the heart, there was the heart and soul of them, there was the brain and the inventor, and then there was like the mouth and the salesman, and it was like they all had the same goal. I was really entertained by that. So fast forward, when I started to take filmmaking as a serious career, I always thought that I wanted to move to New York City, and I think a big part of that had to do with the Ghostbusters. But for quite some time, I moved out to LA and worked in television, and one of the first jobs that I had was an office PA on this TV show called Joan of Arcadia that was on CBS, and the show was shot on the Columbia Pictures movie lot, which was owned by Sony, and Columbia released Ghostbusters. And I think it was maybe my second month on the job where part of what I had to do was drive around one of those golf carts that you see, and I'd be picking up producers and bringing them to the set, or picking up talent and bringing them back to the production. I came around a corner, and Ecto-1, the Ghostbusters vehicle, was it was out of storage. It was a disaster. It was like beat up, but it was it was the prop car sitting in the middle of this lot, and no one was around, and it took my breath away seeing this thing like in front of my eyes. I'm like, oh man, I grew up in Rhode Island watching Ghostbusters, and here I am in LA, and Ecto-1 is sitting right in front of me. So I went over to it, and the door, it was unlocked, and I sat in the driver's seat and held the steering wheel. And I'm like, this is so cool. This is so crazy. This is Ecto-1, and I'm sitting inside of Ecto-1. So another coincidence from working on Joan of Arcadia, the show was created by this woman, Barbara Hall, but the showrunner, main producer that kind of like ran the day-to-day production, he was married to Annie Potts, and Annie Potts is
the secretary.
The secretary played Janine in the film. And on the last day of Joan of Arcadia, which was canceled, I think I was on the show for the last season, and just sort of through process of elimination, I became sort of like the head office PA, and they kind of like gave me the more fun things to do. And on the last day, the main producer was like, oh, I've got a couple boxes, like, just drive it up to my house in Calabasas, and whatever, you can just go home after that. And I drove up there, and Annie Potts answers the door, and I'm like, oh my god, it's Annie Potts, this is crazy. She is like, oh, she knew it was like the last day, and that we were wrapping things up, and that, it was probably like the start of a vacation for me. She was like, oh, well, you're here. Do you want to come in and have a beer? And I was like, sure. Oh, okay. So I go inside, and we have a beer, and she's like, oh, well, it's so nice out. Let's just go sit, by the pool outside. And so now I'm sitting outside of the pool having a beer with Annie Potts. And I think I had maybe like one or two beers, and then it got to a point where I was like, okay, say, Annie, I mean, I have to ask you, what was it like to work on Ghostbusters? And she immediately started laughing and was like, I get asked this question all the time. And I'm guessing that she probably shares this anecdote often because it was like the first thing that came to her mind was how it was such an exciting moment in New York City in the early 80s where, Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd and Ivan Reitman were all like at the height of their careers with the films that they're making and with Saturday Night Live in New York City, and the energy was just there. Like when I was reading sort of like the history of production of Ghostbusters, I mean, they had a lot of films that shot on location in the city, but Dan Aykroyd and Bill Murray were like, they embraced it. Like they were embracing the people, and like they were just having fun with it. And so there was a lot of positive energy even on production of Ghostbusters before they knew it would become this sort of like mega blockbuster like biggest comedy of all time kind of movie. And so Annie Potts, coming from the theater world, she said that she had a lot of difficulty on set because she took the script very seriously. It was like it was like the rule book for her, and she has all these guys that are just like improvising and winging it and not going by the script. And a lot of her scenes are with Bill Murray, like that a lot of her main interaction is with that. And she was just telling me how she was actually really frustrated and with her first original experience with Ghostbusters. But now she knows that it's it's a very special thing. And me having this conversation with her was just sort of mind blowing. And then my producer boss came home and was like, "What the hell are you doing? You're like drinking beers with my wife by the pool." And I was like, yeah, this is crazy. And they kept me over for dinner, and I, did my best to not ask any more Ghostbusters questions, even though that was the only thing I wanted to ask.
I gotta say though, that's really bold. I mean, to have the guts to say like, okay, thanks for the beer. I really wanted because
it just felt like a moment that I'm like, I have no idea how I've managed to get myself in this situation, but I'm in this situation. I have to. She's got to tell me.
Absolutely.
She's got to tell me what it's like to work on Ghostbusters. I just sat in Ecto-1 like 3 weeks ago.
Still had a little of that ecto juice.
Yeah. Ghostbusters is just like, it's my favorite movie of all time. I guess that I got that point across like 20 minutes ago, but
it needs to be reiterated.
Yeah. It's a fantastic film, and it sort of like represents an era of filmmaking and storytelling that isn't really being produced today. And I kind of strive for that like the projects that I work on have a sort of magical things happening in an environment and in a world that feels like it could totally happen. Like there is an element to, like they had taken, from what I understand, Dan Aykroyd grew up, I guess, with one of his obsessions was the supernatural and like paranormal activity, like all that sort of stuff. And the Ghostbusters idea was like, it was very sincere, passionate. He put a lot of himself into building this world and trying to build it right and make it interesting. And for Ivan Reitman as the director, he was sort of, what I understand, brought it into, well, let's make it about these guys trying to start a business about this thing and doing it in New York City. And I feel like an audience will be able to relate to that. And I think they succeeded wildly.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the energy. You can totally see that in the scene when they, both at the end of the movie and right before they're about to go into the skyscraper.
Yeah,
when the crowd's there and they're just like, and
that is all. And so that scene, from what I was reading in sort of like there's a behind the scenes visual companion book that just came out that I shared with you guys. It's a beautiful, awesome behind the scenes book. It has a lot of behind the scenes photos and like super fan info that like I feel like I've only seen in sort of like the Star Wars Star Trek world and not in the Ghostbusters world before. A side anecdote to what you were saying is that scene was like, there was people just really screaming that out like it wasn't even in the script. Awesome. Because they were like, this is so cool, these guys Ghostbusters, go in there, you just got knocked down on the ground, this is awesome. They probably didn't even know what what the story beats were at the time during the production of it,
what part of the movie they were going to be in.
We're like, these guys, they're going in there. They just got knocked down, but this is like a big moment.
Now, when did you see this movie? Like, how old were you, do you think, when you first
Well,
saw it?
I have a question relating to that. Did you see the cartoon first or the movie first?
I saw the movie first, and it might have been around the exact same time, but I'm pretty sure I saw the movie first because I knew that the cartoon was a spin-off of the movie.
Okay.
And had you seen, because the sequel came out in 88,
Yeah.
right? So that was like 4 years later.
That my parents, they surprised me and brought me to the movie theater, and I thought that I was going to see a movie that they had wanted to see. And so like that opening sequence, I was like, wait, kids were talking about there's pink slime and the opening scene is pink slime. That was a very exciting moment.
That's awesome.
But I didn't realize until many years later that Ghostbusters 2 was sort of considered a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah. I mean, I remember as a kid seeing it in a super packed theater, and just later on when I heard it was a disappointment, I'm like, what world? In what world was this a disappointment?
Well,
I mean,
I remember there was a lot of build up for it.
Yeah.
And I was too young to like get the buzz, but I remember like flipping through magazines, people talking about Ghostbusters 2 that was in the air, but it was 87, and so it's all Scrooged, because that came out the year prior.
Ghostbusters, that came out in 89.
Yeah,
89. So
Ghostbusters
Scrooge,
2 was 89,
so Scrooged was 88.
Yeah, okay.
Yes.
So that's what so looking
came out
at
the same year as
so I'm
Ninja
seeing all the
Turtles
like
and Batman.
pre-pro for Scrooge, but basically there was so much buzz already for Ghostbusters 2 that I was like, oh, Bill Murray, giant ghost hand pulling him through a thing, like these are stills from Ghostbusters 2.
Right.
And so when I saw the movie, I was really confused.
Oh man.
You're like, oh man, Bobcat Goldthwait in this movie. It's gonna be great.
Wait, well, he's not even in Scrooge, is he?
Yeah, he is.
I mean,
Bobcat Goldthwait's totally in Scrooge.
Wait, who is he in Scrooge?
He's the guy with the shotgun. He's the guy that gets fired at the beginning and comes back with the shotgun.
I mean,
I thought you meant
feel
not
like-
the cab driver, though.
I feel like Ghostbusters 2
No, it's
is
Busta Rhymes.
is a very decent, very decent
Busta
sequel.
Rhymes.
I think the problem is that it's just hard. Like when you have a film that's that surprised everyone and was so much fun and all this stuff. I think it's just you just can't lightning
Duplicate
can't
that,
strike twice.
Yeah.
And I kind of feel like maybe what they considered a failure is that it really wasn't as good. I personally love it because I was the right age and I love the villain guy, the Vigo guy, not Vigo but the other guy, Janusz. Yes.
I mean, I guess I haven't. I mean, I just rewatched Ghost, the original, obviously, so I'd have to rewatch the second one, I guess, to make a fair assessment. But it doesn't seem that much worse to me. In some ways, it's better. Like, I mean, in some ways.
In some ways, yeah, for sure. I think from the filmmakers' perspective, from what I read and understand, is that they struggled. I think they went into production really quickly after it was greenlit, and the
original film,
the sequel,
the second one.
Oh, well, that was true to the original as well. The original went from like, yes, like they pitched it. They were like, yes, let's do it. They had like a month or something to write the script. And then boom, they were in production. And the whole thing they said yes, but it's got to be released like a year from now. Oh, wow. And when you consider all the effects and all that stuff, like it was insane.
So much work.
Yeah, it was crazy that the original was made in such a short turnaround.
Well, I find that movies that have those kinds of restrictions, I think, benefit from them in a lot of ways. If a lot of these movies that you absolutely love for some reason, if you dig, you find out there's some restriction that they were butting up against and had to find creative workarounds. I feel like.
Yeah, and there were a lot of, and to echo some of what you said, Eddie, like I watched the movie on iTunes, and they have a bunch of like de-extras type things. So there were a few interviews, and what kept coming up over and over again is while they were making, everyone was kind of like they all knew that they were making something that was special. Like they had like everyone kind of had a feeling like there was just really good vibes throughout. And the other cool thing was that like many people that they interviewed all said like this is still my favorite movie that I've ever worked on, kind of thing. Like there's still a lot of good feelings about it. Even though a lot of it was crazy schedule, hard work, and all this stuff. Like, and they were saying they did some early shots where they had the guys in the outfits just like running down in the streets in New York, kind of doing pickup shots, and they just said like as soon as they saw these images, they were like, wow, this works. Like there's magic here somehow, and
it looks right.
Yeah, there's just something about it. And like the blue collar thing I hadn't thought of before, and that was interesting. But the other interesting thing is it's a very like Reagan era movie because it's like first they're like in liberal institution.
They're all very they're like college elite academics.
Yeah, and they're shut down by the college bureaucracy.
Yeah,
and like because they're innovative thinkers and they're shut down.
But really,
they're
charlatans.
I know. And then they also, at the height of their success, then it's like a government regulator who comes in and shuts him down from the EPA.
The EPA has all this
This
power.
man has no penis.
Yeah, so it's that I thought struck me as very like Reagan era, like pro-capitalist, like anti-government kind of stuff.
Well, the thing that I find fascinating to this day is how appealing that was and is to children.
Yeah.
Like that is an absolutely grown-up movie
100%.
with some scary stuff in there, some very, very grown-up innuendo, and not even innuendo in certain parts, outright like nudity. That's a terrible word. Outright grown-up stuff.
Sure. Yeah.
And just I was so enthusiastic about it. Even before there were toys, I feel like the toys were a reaction to the kids' reaction. It's not like I don't know the history, but I don't imagine they thought that they were going to be selling toys.
They didn't have the toys didn't exist until the cartoon.
The cartoon,
Right.
yeah.
They all seem like big kids though too. That's the other
Yeah.
side. Like
Yeah.
they never work. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? They're like
Well-
they're busting ghosts, and Winston kind of talks about it like work, and they kind of like complain and smoke cigarettes. But that's more
Ray
like
is a big kid.
but that's
He's super enthusiastic.
Oh, and Winston complains about it. Like they all kind of have that
he never
work.
complained. Winston was super
Well,
excited.
it's a job. It's a job.
Yeah.
Well,
kind of
no,
thing.
he was like,
The best
I
job
love
ever.
this town.
Yeah.
Isn't that what he
Yeah.
says?
But I guess what I mean is they kind of don't really work at their university jobs, and they're getting kicked out of there.
Yeah.
Right.
And then from there on, it's just like it's akin to the Explorers or maybe the Goonies done right, where you have the mouth character and the heart character and the sort of like
the
smart
Goonies done right.
and
Is the Goonies not done right?
Oh yes, it was.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
oh man, guys.
You
You need to revisit Goonies though.
I
know,
did.
I
I watched
know.
it just
I love
this summer.
Goonies. Yeah,
All
I
right.
love
I
that
watched
movie.
it in an outdoor projector. It was awesome.
But one of the things that coming back to this concept of kids enjoy, like I have such a greater appreciation for Pete Venkman's character as a grown up, because that is just the perfect character. He's like a charlatan. He doesn't halfway believe in the stuff they're doing themselves, and he
just kind of rolls with it when it becomes successful.
And he's
It's like,
super complicated,
Yeah.
but so well done.
He's like the window for the audience of he's with these guys, he loves these guys, he's probably hasn't done all of his homework, so it's more of that. It's not that he doesn't believe it; it's just he doesn't understand it.
Yeah.
I think he doesn't even believe it at the beginning.
Yeah.
Too.
Well, and he's also lying when he's doing the ESP test.
yeah, he's just trying to pick up the girl.
Yeah.
But it's interesting too because you have that character, you have that sort of like Bugs Bunny character in Animal House, and it's maybe not as successful because there's less heart, and you have him playing that character again in Stripes.
Yeah.
Not that he played in Animal House, but he's
Right,
playing
yeah.
that. You know, Stripes is sort of the precursor to your Peter Venkman in '81, another
that's a
Ivan
good
Reitman
point.
movie. But again, it's that Bugs Bunny, like he doesn't seek conflict, and he rolls with. He kind of knows the rules a little bit. In the world's going to work with him, and you know your was it William Atherton, the EPA guy, is your Daffy Duck or whatever.
And all you've got to do is push his buttons, and he'll
Right.
do
Yeah.
all the damage to himself. Yeah.
I was reading something that William Atherton was commenting on about just sort of his general performance, that he saw his character as like an opportunity. They knew that they wanted the ghost to feel real and like it to actually feel really scary, and they did that sort of to help complement the comedy, like that the jokes would be funnier if all the scenarios that they were in actually felt really intense. So like the EPA being like, it is sort of believable that the EPA would come in and be like, what the hell are you doing?
I mean,
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
him playing
maybe
it
to-
as like a strict principal.
to kids a little bit. It's a little. He's sort of just like the generic authoritarian. But
Yeah, and he's like, he walks in the room like you're like, oh, you're the bad guy. Like he's so cartoonishly.
But he
like,
could have given you any
evil.
acronym, like I'm from the GRM of the government. All right.
But it's also too like just the way he's played like so over the top, and like he's just such an ass. You know what I mean? Like from the get go, it's
And he plays the
cartoonish.
same character in Real Genius as well.
He
Yeah.
also plays
Yeah.
the same character in
I think he was
Die Hard,
I think
doesn't
he
he?
was he was definitely typecast. I'm sure he could do other things, but he was so good at that.
That's true.
Some guys you just love to hate. I don't know what it is.
But
it's definitely like when I was looking and thinking about it, I think it definitely appeals to boys probably a lot.
Yeah.
More. Like it's definitely like it's I don't know. It's what it seems like.
Well, because Venkman's got the he's engaging girls by pulling pigtails a little bit too. Like
Yeah.
he's not he's not like a smooth.
No.
He is smooth. He is smooth.
Yeah, but it's smooth in a Pepe Le Pew kind of smooth.
He's kind of the first. He's kind of the first guy to be like, what is it called when you kind of
neg?
downplay? Yeah, neg neg
Yeah.
ladies.
That's
He's
terrible.
making fun of him at the
No,
same
but he
time.
does. He does it in the
I
movie
know.
successfully. But
successfully.
But I just love that. Well, first of all, Bill Murray is the only guy that could ever pull that off. It's so amazing that, I mean, this character they created together. I just remember being a kid going Bill Murray's not a handsome guy, but man,
It
makes
makes yeah.
even as a kid, I was just I would date that guy.
Especially with that spooky romance music they had.
That's another thing we haven't talked about at all is the soundtrack.
Yeah.
There are some killer songs in that. I mean, obviously the theme song is just super memorable. The logo, they just got everything right.
Yeah.
They just got, and a lot of it just lucky, but there's a lot of good.
Well, they were putting in. I'm pretty sure that Dan Aykroyd had boards with him when he went in with pitch, and they had sort of a mock logo that a friend of his had made, and they knew the jump. I think he was wearing one of the jumpsuits when he was pitching it to the studio.
Yeah, no, it was really his baby, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think Ivan Reitman definitely helped him.
I remember, he was bringing it back. I love all these ideas, now let's just bring it home and bring it back down to earth for a second.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's also you can tell Dan Aykroyd is so into it and loves it. And when he's playing the character, he's the one that's saying all the pseudo scientific lines.
Super happy heart kind of.
Yeah, and you can just tell he's just so excited and a big kid, and
well, that's totally his role too.
Yeah.
And in part two as well, that Ghostbusters didn't work out, and he runs a mysterious bookstore, that nobody comes into, but he just gets to be around all the Tobin spirit guys.
Yeah. But the funny thing is when they interview him, he talk behind the scenes stuff, he talks about that stuff a lot, and he's super serious about it.
Yeah,
he still is. He really is. And he also, I remember he had a sort of.
He had an alien show.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He had where he'd be the host and he would introduce these stories and of the paranormal. Yeah. And that's when I learned that he was really into all this stuff. And it wasn't just
I learned it on the Mr. Mike show. Showed his web toe, poked it with that screwdriver.
Oh man, I did not see that.
Oh, you gotta watch.
There's a sketch on the old Saturday Night Live. It's one of the Schiller's Real, 76 or 77, when John Belushi goes back to visit the graves of the not ready for primetime players, and he talks about Dan Aykroyd died on his motorcycle driving too fast. I had to identify him by his webbed toes. He's got him, Yeah, it was. And then in Coneheads, they show his webbed toes.
Right.
He's coming out of the pool.
He's such an interesting character because the fact that he was both this great comedian, but also interested in all these weird esoteric things, and now he runs a liquor company or something.
Yeah,
He sells liquor and what's that?
It's vodka or tequila, and it's in a skull, a crystal skull.
Huh. Yeah, and I don't know. He's just a very interesting person.
Yeah, but I wonder. I always wonder about Dan Aykroyd because I kind of feel I don't know if people didn't like working with him or something, but he doesn't do a lot of work anymore on stuff.
But I feel it might be by choice.
I think it's
maybe it is, but I don't know.
Put on a lot of weight.
Yeah. It's also a matter of what do you when he's making projects that he's interested in doing them, that's great, and he gets into them. And there was that period where Jane Curtin and him and that his era of SNL guys were in the SNL movies. But I think
he ended up being in some of the not Black Sheep, but Tommy Boy.
Right.
He showed up in a couple.
But I think it's more I think he is a little more selective, kind of like Rick Moranis, where
Moranis tired.
No, he said if the right script came through, he'd work. But it's the same thing where his his priorities are different.
But there was a long stretch where he just wasn't working at all.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
just raising his kids. I
Right.
thought that was really cool. But man, Rick Moranis killed it in that
he
movie.
really
Yeah.
did.
Amazing.
Killed
and
it
he
in that
brought apparently he brought a lot of the ideas of like all the things that he says and
Yeah.
does.
And what's funny is they had written that part for
John Candy.
for John Candy,
Oh,
but John
wow.
Candy didn't really get it.
Yeah.
Like he was like making he didn't really get it. He was making all these weird suggestions, like he was gonna have like a German accent or something,
Yeah.
and they were like, oh. So John Candy
Oh,
ended up
that's so funny because you know when Rick Moranis is when he's in his accountant mode before he's turned into the dog guy.
Yeah.
He's doing like John Candy's character from Vacation a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, the one where he's like, I don't know, when he gets shot in the leg with the BB gun.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I always thought too that that Dana Carvey's performance of Garth was a little bit like Louis Tully from Ghostbusters,
Definitely.
with like the lisp and the glasses, and I'm like, I wonder if I haven't done any digging to see if that's actually
I
something.
wonder if that's an archetypal comedy character.
Yeah.
Well, they're both Canadian. Maybe it springs from some Canadian.
But it's like even the
reference that they-
voice. If you put the voices side by
Yeah.
side, the direction is totally the same.
Yeah, what's the line when he's like, many of people met their end at the swore that day, I tell you, or something like that. It's like, that's totally
That's
just Garth.
Garth.
If you close your eyes, yeah. That's funny.
But yeah, I think Ghostbusters, and also we were talking about sort of how Ghostbusters 2 is slightly on the weaker side. I was reading that they were never feeling confident about the third act, the script, and so they were constantly working on it. And it sounded like at one point they just settled with what they had.
Pencils down.
Yeah, and they just kind of like, we need to finish this movie or we're not going to make this. So and I think Ivan Reitman sort of has commented on that specifically of like, third act is weak.
Now, what about Evolution? That was like rumored to be the third Ghostbusters, right? With David Duchovny and
I saw that just recently again.
was that also Ivan Reitman?
It was
directed
by
Reitman, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that was the rumor. I don't know.
I remember them marketing like Ghostbusters with it, but I don't know if the story was, because to me it would mean that Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis would have had to be a part of the Evolution script, right?
Yeah.
Would have had to have hopefully written, right?
Yeah.
I mean, unless
Like,
Unless they took it out, unless they were going to take it out of their hands. Yeah, I don't know.
or it may have been decontextualized.
Yeah.
Oh,
because
wait.
of that.
Dan Aykroyd was in that movie. Dan Aykroyd was
he's
in Evolution as well.
Yeah, that's right.
Oh.
He's like a military general or
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
So that was something where I didn't know if any of you guys had
No,
more knowledge on it, but it's something I
Are you
I had
starting
heard
a rumor?
No, it's a rumor that I think has been around. And I was
Yeah,
just knowing
I've
if in your
definitely-
research you guys had heard any more about it.
I've heard.
All right, so here's I'm getting down to the real nitty gritty. I'm gonna ask us all this question. So I'm gonna start with you, Eddie, since this is yours. So we got done with Saturday morning. You watched Ghostbusters. You had your Cheerios or whatever. You got out your action figures.
Yeah.
Which character were you? Which character did you always play? And when Timmy came over from next door, you're like, no. I'm this guy. You're not this guy.
It was definitely a battle between Peter Venkman and Ray Stantz. But like for the most part, I actually think I thought that Peter was sort of like a faster gun, so I never credited myself in that kind of way. Of like,
I have that same.
you a little sharper. I think I've got more. I can relate more to Ray on this one.
I'm the enthusiasm guy. I'm cool with that.
Yeah. I get the heart and soul of this thing. Yeah.
We were a little more violent and actiony with it, where it's like you're the ghosts and like run around, like chase them and shoot them with stuff, and then throw a blanket on them.
Oh, so you had the big gun thing.
We had
that you spun around.
there was the one that shot foam pellets. We had
Yeah.
the one that was a projector. That projected a ghost.
Oh, cool.
What was the one with the crank that looked like the beam was spinning? That was
I didn't have that. It was a cool toy.
That was a
I
really
didn't
cool
have that.
design.
My cousins had that. What else? The one toy that I remember and held on to for a while, there's this one that was like a cream puff ghost, and it had another ghost that put in its mouth, and you would slam it, and it would
nice.
spit the other ghost.
Oh, wow.
It was just like a little weird rubber toy. It was well designed. It was a cute toy, but yeah, no, we were definitely more like action ghost busting.
So you didn't have a character that related or that?
No, we were just kind of like running around.
Can I interrupt really fast? So senior year of high school, all seniors had to dress up, and so 3 three of my buddies, two of them that I had known since my early elementary school days that were also big Ghostbusters fans. We went as the Ghostbusters, and we managed to turn his mom's white Subaru station wagon into Ecto-1.
That's amazing.
We asked every kid in town who had saved any of like the toys that were for kids, like not the action figures, but the proton packs. So we rounded up a bunch of those, we got some jumpsuits, stitched on name patches, and one of my friends, who is now an engineer at GE, had created a working slime pack that he had figured out a way to take a water gun and took apart the nozzle and put inside of it a purple silly string canister, and that when you'd pump it, they would silly string, which it was and he did this like weeks, and we were, I don't know, 17 years old, and so we were the Ghostbusters for our Halloween in high school, and to like have fun with it, we ran down to the middle school and just jumped into random classrooms that were in session. And like, has anybody seen any ghosts? And the kids' faces, it was I for that one moment I felt like I got to be a Ghostbuster professionally.
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. Anyway, that's my last interruption.
Well, Real Ghostbusters, the cartoon show.
Yeah, well, what I love is that it had to be called the Real Ghostbusters because Filmation, in the meantime, had brought back an old property. So there was a corny TV show in the 70s called The Ghostbusters, like spaced out.
Ghostbusters.
Yeah, and it was like two guys and a third guy in an ape suit.
Yeah.
That fought like goofy vampires and stuff. And Filmation had made a cartoon of that. And when the Ghostbusters movie was made, they had to get the rights from Filmation to use the name. And then when that became huge, they were like, oh, let's bring back the Ghostbusters. So they brought back the cartoon that had the similar name, but it had nothing to do with it. And a lot of kids like me watched it very confused, to be like, what's with the guy?
And it also had like
suit?
a circle ghost logo that was like,
this is
not quite
Yeah,
right.
so they were definitely, and they sold toys, and I'm sure they were just cashing in on people's confusion. I'm sure there were a lot of disappointed kids who got the wrong toy.
Yeah, what's this shit?
And that's why they had to call the cartoon the Real Ghostbusters.
No, well, I think that what I love is that I'm sure the Filmation people were like, well, you can't use Ghostbusters because we got a cartoon named Ghostbusters, so you got to change the name. And they're like, okay, we're the Real Ghostbusters.
Maybe.
I hope that's the truth.
Ooh.
No,
So the wrong toy story. I have to tell this. This is like a shameful toy story. So in Oklahoma, I'm a kid. The board, you know how there was like 13 Dead End Drive? You remember that board game? There's this board game, the Ghostbusters board game, that had like partitions. It was 3D. So there's the board, then there was these like partitions that made rooms, and there was like a staircase with like a plastic knight that would like there was all these pieces that would move, like stuff that would go down the stairs, all these parts, these moving parts to this board game. And I really, really wanted that for my birthday. And my aunt, like super aunt, looks everywhere for this thing, finds the Ghostbusters game, and I'm hoping it's Ghostbusters, and I open it and it's the Ghostbusters role-playing game. And I'm like, thank you. And like I went in the other room and cried. Because I felt like I was like 8 or something. I felt super guilty for not like fully appreciating all the hard work that she went into like finding this thing, and really sad that I didn't have the best toy that was out there. And I had it, and I could make heads nor tails of the thing. It was a D6 based game. I think it was West End that put it out. And nowadays it'd be, I've heard people talk about playing it. Eddie would love to play.
I would play it tonight.
Do you know where is that thing long gone?
It's probably on eBay or whatever.
No, but the one that you had.
Oh yeah, no, that's gone. I probably even
he burned it.
I don't know if I even had. Yeah, I don't know if I ever got the real board game either. But it was a sad old day. But that's my wrong toy story right there.
I like that you were conflicted. That you knew that it wasn't what you wanted, but you didn't want to hurt your aunt's feelings. So I'm just gonna go cry alone.
Yeah,
it's really very noble of you.
That's a tough spot to be in, where you're like, you're just coming out of your like sociopath phase of being a child, where you don't recognize that anyone else has feelings or emotions. and you're like, oh no, like my baser instincts are
actions
still in
have-
play. my vast disappointment. I can't just kill her. She's my aunt. Yeah.
Then she'd become a ghost and he'd
Exactly.
have to bust her.
Buster.
Because busting makes me feel good.
There's some great McElroy brothers. If you want to listen to my Bim Bam, there's some great Ghostbusters bits that they do. I don't want to peel them up, but some great. The question I played some for Eddie a while ago, but one of the questions they asked was if one of the Ghostbusters died, would the other Ghostbusters have to bust them? And so they go on forever about it, and they get into Slimer and whether Slimer should smoke weed and move.
Well, the Slimer,
That's amazing.
I did hear a bit they were doing about Slimer, about how it's like very hypocritical of them to hang out with Slimer.
Yeah. It's like, having a rat in your pest control offices.
So the cartoon was sort of like a segue for that. Like in the first episode of the cartoon, he sort of like is like Pete Venkman wants to bust him because he thinks he's a pest, but Ray is sort of he's like, oh no, but he's fine. I can talk to him like he's like a bad puppy dog. And so when they went to make the sequel, they were like, oh, a big part of our audience now has like a different perception of Slimer, and so they kind of played him differently.
So so here's something, because watching the movie, they say like he's showing Winston how they put stuff away, and he says like, oh, we put the so and so's and the Slimers in here, and so Slimer is only used in context of like a type
his
of
name
ghost.
wasn't Slimer,
Right.
Yeah.
So when do you know if like in production they were calling him
Well,
Slimer?
it was because Pete Venkman says he slimed me, which was like a line that I don't even know if that was technically in the script or not. Wow. And so they kind of always, I think he was originally referred to as Onion Head.
No, potato. I think it was potato.
Or
maybe it was onion.
I think it's Onion Head, only because I just read it in the book. But they end up Slimer officially gets his name crowned in the cartoon. Yeah.
So I wonder who's that just was somebody was like, well, this will appeal to kids if you have the Slimer like in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Maybe something like that.
I think it might have been the writers of the show that were like, oh, this is like one of the main
the
ghosts.
kids really like this guy. Yeah.
And it's repeat.
Yeah, and as animation, it's easy to make him a character, whereas in the movies it would be a lot more complicated.
Yeah.
Although nowadays it would be super easy.
And he was just
and
sort
he's
of
the
like
snarf of group.
Yeah.
And he was more of like the funnier one. He's just like eats. He's just like a big dog.
He's Scooby Doo.
And he slimes stuff.
And again,
all the time.
what was he before he died? Well, who is
He was a bus. He was a bus driver.
So they were in that book. They sort of talk about how he was probably just this like big overweight man that would just like sit and watch TV, like just stuff his face with like potato chips and stuff.
That was his whole deal.
What was it in part 2 that it was in part 1 when all the ghosts are let loose from the laser containment thing, and they show him, and isn't he driving a bus in that scene?
He's driving a bus in the sequel.
Yeah. So I think he was a bus driver.
Of course, obviously.
Yeah.
So the one quick thing, let's talk about the voices in the cartoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're kind of weird.
Yeah.
Especially the Peter Venkman or
I love
Bill
that
Murray, the Bill Murray counterpart, because he can't really do Bill Murray, so he just kind of talks sort of slow.
Well, he does. It is a kind of a Bill Murray impression, but his delivery is so slow. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost feels southern or something.
An interesting thing about, I don't listen. I think it's interesting, but in the Garfield cartoons, this guy did the voice of this.
That's why
Garfield, and then when the movie came out, Bill Murray did the voice of Garfield. So they kind of like played each other.
That is funny.
I think the story goes that I forget who that actor's name was, but he, when they first casted everybody to play all these roles, they didn't want impersonators, but John, you might remember his name, the LaMarche, who played
Egon.
Is the only one that during his audition impersonates Harold Ramis, but they liked it, so they kept him doing it. And then apparently, I guess Bill Murray was watching the first season of the cartoon and was like, oh, how come my guy doesn't sound more like me? And so they fired the Garfield guy and then brought on Dave Coulier from Full House, who under like the direction of you should try to sound more like Bill Murray's character.
So that was season 2. They have a different guy.
Yeah.
Because I only rewatched some of the season 1 stuff, so I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I probably watched it in French, so it was like.
And in Wikipedia,
could you imagine
and Murray are the only ones slated as bank players. So the other guy doesn't doesn't get the
Oh,
Wikipedia credit.
Wow.
Could you imagine being the guy at the like animation studio that gets the call from Bill Murray?
Oh man,
You're just like, yeah, boss, I'll order pizzas because we're working, 14 hours today. Yeah, I'll get that. Okay, ring, ring. Hello.
why doesn't my guy sound more like me? Yeah. And they're
Lorenzo-
like, that's a great. And they were probably like, yeah, that's a great question. While they got the production office on the other line.
But also the
Lorenzo
drawing-
Music. That's the guy who did the first 2 CDs.
Yeah.
Lorenzo Music's name.
This is the name of
That's
that
an awesome
voice
name.
guy.
But the drawings also don't really look like the characters.
No, I think they probably tried to separate them to
Yeah.
some extent.
Yeah, like the hair color was the
Yeah.
the big shift.
They
Yeah,
made
but also,
Egon
like-
blonde, and they made all the jumpsuits different colors.
Yeah, and
as
they have
well.
like long faces and all this stuff.
and I gotta say, oddly, they made Ray a little fat.
Yeah.
He wasn't that fat.
Well, he's like fat in
He's
season one,
round though.
and then
He's
they
the roundest of the three.
Yeah, of them, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because they're all about the same height and roughly build. Like they're not
Yeah.
too very different in the movie.
Well, except for Egon.
Egon,
who's
yeah.
really definitely taller.
Harold Ramis.
Yeah.
yeah, but not
He's tall.
He's not towering over.
Yes,
them,
he
though.
is. Yes, he is. Take a look.
If
Alright.
you, especially if you watch Stripes, you can see how much taller
They
Bill
all have
Murray
platforms
is.
on.
All right. Well,
Well, let's just say too, like Ivan Reitman, great track record, way to go.
Yeah.
yeah.
What
was that?
Here's his track record for this period. Meatballs, Stripes, Ghostbusters, like right there.
Yeah,
That's already more than most people ever do.
No, it's true. It's true. But yeah, it's.
So before we wrap this, Eddie, there's more Ghostbusters on the horizon.
Yeah.
I know.
I know.
What's going to happen? Are they going to Star Wars your legacy?
I assume so, and I'm probably being an obnoxious snob about it, but I don't have a whole lot of faith in the. I'm gonna go see it because I have to go see it.
Now, are they making 2 versions still?
I think there's talks that I think they're gonna.
Oh, they're still doing the dudes version
guy
and the
version.
ladies.
Yeah, like
What are you? Are you serious?
Yeah, I think so.
That is sad.
That won't stand. That won't.
They're
continue.
just
That's
they're
sad.
gonna McDonald's the hell out of this thing and they're just gonna be.
It would be awesome if the guy one was the Ghostbusters.
With the guy in the.
Yeah.
They're just
that
gonna,
guy's Channing Tatum in the ape suit.
That would be great.
No, we swear, Tim. We swear. Watch him break dance. I share your kind of like reservation in that like I have total faith in that cast, but that's it.
Yeah.
It's just like that cast is to me is just potential, has the same potential that the cast from the original Ghostbusters had.
My assumption is that if you don't really have like the passion and the research that Dan Aykroyd brought to just like the script level of the film, like these people are obviously incredibly talented in the sketch comedy world, so like they'll have their comedic beats. My concern is more of like, is this story just going to be a recycled version of 20 movies we've seen in the last 2 years?
Yeah.
Or just
like, are they going to
overly
be able to
inspired.
ground it? Is there going to be enough of the sci-fi element to it? Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be
I
my
think
only concern.
Paul
but,
Feig hasn't let me down yet.
but he also hasn't done anything nerdy in that way. You know?
The
Yeah.
Spy movie was kind of nerdy.
And they shot the whole and they shot the movie in Boston.
That is sad.
Boston is subbing in for New York City in this one.
Really?
Are they
100%.
are they calling it New York?
Oh yes.
Why?
What?
Why did that happen?
Media coverage of that.
The money.
Yeah, but Boston
But
can't be
there's so
cheaper
many
to shoot in
There's
than
so
New
many
York.
things shooting here.
I
There's
know.
so many things shooting here.
Yeah, it's another like
That's
it's
a-
another little
That-
notch
that's a-
on the.
That's a big bummer.
Yeah, it is a big bummer.
That just took my.
I'm
excitement
sure they'll
down.
have like second unit stuff so that it feels like it's
Oh,
cuts
sure.
well.
There's
but,
going to be tons
but
of B-roll shots.
yeah, but it's not.
They're going to be like on the Charles.
Yeah.
No, like Boston just doesn't look anything like New York.
No.
I don't even know how they can fake that.
It's like why bother? You're going to do so much digital matting. If anything.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, as long as at least.
I mean, maybe they're shooting all the
Hopefully-
interiors. In
I think
Boston.
as long as they had fun making it, I think it'll be a fun movie.
And I mean
And
they
it'll get women into Ghostbusters.
and
Because that's what we need more of, ladies and Ghostbusters.
That's right.
I mean, they managed to bring back everybody, including Bill Murray at this point, besides Harold Ramis. But I think there is featured appearances by everyone. Oh, and except maybe Louis Moranis. But
Oh,
I'd
Moranis
rather-
has to show up.
I don't.
rather-
I think he says in that recent article that was circling around that he passed on it.
Yeah.
I mean, I just feel like you don't need the cameos.
Yeah,
I
it's
think
sort
it'd be. I'd rather
a little
they
unnecessary.
start fresh.
Well, I kind of would rather not. So do do we know enough about it to know if it's like a reboot or if it's in the same world that Ghostbusters already did
Dan Aykroyd
exist?
talks about it as like a passing of the torch, but I don't know if that's like with franchise
Right.
or with the franchise within the film.
Right.
Yeah, I hope it's not just like the Man or Aster Man. This is our female clone band.
Right. Well, what I hope is Ghostbusters did already happen, and that these people are like, well, we can do that too, or something like that. That's what I hope.
It's been a
Next
long enough
generation.
time. They're probably
Right.
all retired, but then
Right.
ghosts come back, and then these ladies gotta.
Right.
Wait, but so you're saying so in addition to this one, there's another one?
Well, there was
So,
some talk of
there-
Dan
yeah.
Aykroyd wanting to, right? Wasn't that the deal? He wanted to write.
There was
Yeah.
also
script or
some like
something.
hullabaloo, like people saying like, "Oh, a girl one," and
Yeah.
it's like, "Well, let's make a boy one too for boys." So I don't know. Speaking of weird, that one my last like thought on this thing, that montage scene with the magazines and then just like the random sexy ghost dream that
Yes.
that
Yes. That
Ray
Dan-
has.
That Dan Aykroyd, yeah.
Weirdest
Yeah.
sort of non sequitur sequence. Like the montage sequence was kind of weirdly done to begin with.
Yeah.
And then
Wait, which montage? When the ghosts have been released?
It
No,
sort of
it's-
establishes in the story that they're like having
their-
success
yeah.
with the business.
Yeah,
It's when things take off.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
the
yeah.
ghost business is booming.
Yeah, okay.
And they
montage.
do this whole like they take magazines and wipe frame with them, and then
Yeah.
that's how they get to the new clip, and then they introduce a new magazine and wipe frame, and it's kind of it's clunky and weird, and it's like taking.
But what's the part with the ghost dream?
So
you're
then
talking
near the
about?
end of that thing, they cut to Ray laying in bed wearing epaulettes. He basically his uniform is down, and all you see is him wearing this like Napoleon style jacket thing, and a ghost lady is floating above him, and he's like, "Whoa!" And then his pants, then she disappears, and his belt buckle.
Oh, but that's
undoes
not a
itself.
dream. I have a feeling that was them busting that. They were using him as bait to bust that.
No.
No. Because then
he-
he's like, it goes pants, then cut to his face, and he crosses his eyes, then cut to him in bed, falling out of bed.
Yeah.
Like in his normal Ghostbusters
So
bed.
it's like
But
he
is
was
that
having
the
a
end of the
ghost-
montage?
yeah.
It was originally shot as a scene on its own with Winston. Like Ray and Winston go to this old like army barrack, and there's like a scene that they shot, but then it just ended up on the cutting room floor. But they kept that one moment,
So weird.
Yeah.
turned it into a dream sequence,
And just, like,
they should have just
shoehorned
cut
it
it because
into-
it really feels weird and
Yeah.
Because the montage was already like, this is, I get it, and when you're,
Yeah.
it was an oddly done montage, and then to just throw this dream sequence at the end was like, what is going on?
it's true. What's gonna happen?
But that was that I didn't dislike it, but that
Yeah.
was the weirdest part of the movie.
Well, thanks, fellas, for indulging in my obsession.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
It's a good one.
Thanks for
Thanks
joining us for
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man.
Great
Thank you
having
guys
me.
for having me. This was fun.
So Ghostbusters by Ivan Reitman.
Yes.
You can find that on iTunes and where DVDs are often sold.
Sure.
Blu-rays probably.
And a
Blu-rays.
Blockbuster near you.
Yeah.
And they got that sweet book.
I
on
bet you if you
Amazon.
go to your
Oh, yeah?
local library, you can check it out. From there
Oh,
as well.
nice. It's in the cloud.
But there's ghosts in the libraries.
That's right.
Spooky.
Ghostbusters, starring Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd, Sigourney Weaver, Harold Ramis, Rick Moranis. Ghostbusters.
We came, we saw, we kicked it.
Such a question, there are many possible answers, such as
Thanks again, Eddie. If you want to find more about Ghostbusters, see links to our show. Check us out at newtoyoushow.com or follow us on Twitter at newtoyoushow. I was one of your hosts, John Holt. You can find me at Lord Joho. With me this week,
Julian Cage. You can find me on Twitter at Beautiful Jules.
Keith Vincent, you can find me on Tumblr at earthlingkeith.tumblr.com.
and joining us for the past 3 episodes and this one now, thanks to our guest,
Eddy Volante.
All right.
Thanks.
Where can they find you, Eddie?
You can find me on my website, eddyvolante.tumblr.com.
And any interesting projects people should look out for?
Yeah, I'll have a Kickstarter campaign that'll either hopefully have been completed by the time this airs for a short film called The Privates about it's a sci-fi rock and roll movie about a band called The Privates from Nashville.
Cool.
Don't count on Keith funding you.
No, I won't.
I will. I just won't fund the Ivan Reitman Kickstarter campaign. be paying. I will fund the Eddie
Well,
Valenti
he'll
war.
give you cash in person.
No,
He's
no,
just
I'll
not
go
willing
through,
to go through the machine.
I'll go through the machine because I believe in
No,
it.
man,
I just
the man is going to get some of that money.
No, I just don't believe that the man. I don't like it when the man games it.
Oh, well, it's the punk rock band is Gem and the Holograms, the live action punk rock band.
No, that movie already happened. It was probably crowdfunded as well.
Nice.
Thanks, gang. It may
Thank
not
you.
be new, but maybe it was new to you. All right.
Sound of an explosion.
About the music.
With him.